pregnant wife cooked dinner and waited all night. The millionaire CEO came home smelling like. Rebecca Carter had always believed in the fairy tale version of love. She believed in loyalty, in the gentle warmth of home-cooked meals, and in the sweet promise of a bright future. She was pregnant, waiting anxiously in the living room as the clock ticked past midnight. Aromas of the elegant dinner she had prepared still lingered, but each passing hour eroded her hopes. Suddenly the door creaked open, revealing her husband, Richard, disheveled, eyes cloudy with guilt, and reeking of an unfamiliar perfume mixed with sharp whiskey. That single moment became the turning point of their carefully curated life, unearthing secrets that threatened to shatter everything she had built. Rebecca Carter felt her heart skip a beat as the grandfather clock's haunting chime echoed through the spacious dining room. 9 p.m. drifted into 10, then 11, and finally into the realm of midnight. She gazed at the lavish meal she'd so painstakingly prepared: roasted salmon glazed with honey and chili, a creamy butternut squash soup, and a lavish salad bursting with freshly picked vegetables. The candles she had lit hours earlier began to burn down to their wicks, their flames flickering like the last remnants of her optimism. She rested a protective hand on her growing belly, where the faint yet constant flutter of new life reminded her why she was enduring this lonely vigil. Richard Carter, her husband, and an influential millionaire, was supposed to be home hours ago. Rebecca stared at her phone, her eyes blurred with a mixture of worry and fatigue, but no text, no call, nothing. In the silence of the night, every sound became amplified: the steady hum of the refrigerator, the faint rustle of curtains in the breeze, the dull thudding of her own heartbeat. She drew in a deep breath, trying to calm the swirl of anxieties that threatened to consume her. Her thoughts drifted to how they had met. She had been a teacher at a small community college, living a simple life, invigorated by her passion for literature. He had attended a charity gala she volunteered at, flanked by his business associates. He was magnetic, deep-set brown eyes, a disarming smile, and a quiet confidence that drew everyone in. Their conversations flowed effortlessly that night, discussing favorite authors, classical music, and the idea of building a better world. Within months, Richard whisked her away into a whirlwind romance. Flashy hotels, exotic vacations, and a breathtaking proposal had culminated in a grand wedding. People wrote about it in the local newspaper, and many believed she had snagged the quintessential dream husband. Now, the dream felt like a fragile piece of porcelain. She feared any slight crack could break it beyond repair. Her eyes flickered again to the door, half expecting to see him bustling through, full of apologies. But there was only silence, a heavy and suffocating kind of silence that made Rebecca's heart ache. Finally, at nearly 2 a.m., the door clicked open. Richard staggered in, his tie askew, shirt partially untucked. The dim hallway light revealed his disheveled hair and reddened eyes. More unsettling was the unmistakable scent that enveloped him: perfume, sweet and heavy, mingled with stale alcohol. Her heart pounded with the sound of the door closing behind him. She saw a fleeting guilt pass over his face, but it disappeared almost as quickly, replaced by a forced, weary smile. "You're still up?" he asked in a low voice that could not mask the tremor in his tone. She felt a surge of relief that he was safe, quickly replaced by a surge of fury mixed with sorrow. "I made dinner," she replied, her voice even quieter, yet carrying a hint of steel. "I waited." Richard's gaze flickered to the untouched meal. His expression softened for a second, as though he felt the weight of her disappointment. Then he sank onto a nearby chair, releasing a long sigh. "I was at a business event, with clients. It ran late." "You know how these things go," he muttered. His words felt stale, rehearsed. The scented evidence on his collar told a different story. Rebecca decided to say nothing about the suspicious perfume. Not yet, The tension was palpable, like a distant rumble of thunder that threatened a storm of revelation. She simply rose, turned off the lights in the dining room, and left the untouched feast to go cold. That evening, or rather that early morning, ended with a strangled sense of unease. Rebecca retreated to the bedroom, her heart heavy. She was simultaneously relieved. He had come home and devastated by the inexplicable shift in his behavior. In the silence, she listened to him shower, the sound of water pounding against the tile. She swallowed the painful lump in her throat, bracing herself for what might come next. Morning arrived with an unusual chill. Rebecca woke up to see the other side of the bed empty. She felt the sting of tears before she could stop them. He was gone again, leaving without a word. Was it shame, anger, or merely routine? She pushed aside the duvet and padded to the kitchen, craving the comfort of a warm cup of tea. On the countertop, she found a note. Had an early meeting, didn't want to wake you. Sorry about last night, Richard. She ran her fingertips over the crisp paper. His handwriting was hurried, as though he had written the note in a rush of guilt. She let out a shaky breath. For all his resources, for all the trappings of wealth, Richard's words felt bankrupt of genuine emotion. Still, her love for him was a stubborn thing, like a resilient vine that refused to wither. Memories of his tenderness in earlier days played in her mind, small gestures that once warmed her heart. How he used to kiss her forehead each morning before leaving for work. How he'd surprise her with daisies, her favorite flowers, on random Thursdays. She remembered his whispered promises, "I'll always be here for you." The phone vibrated suddenly, interrupting her reverie. The caller ID read Sarah Alvarez, her best friend since childhood. Sarah was a pediatric nurse who had always been a beacon of practicality and empathy in Rebecca's life. "Hey, Becca," Sarah's bright voice carried concern. "You okay? I was worried about you last night. I know it's not like Richard to be out that late." Rebecca pressed her lips together. I'm all right physically, just a bit unsettled. He came home eventually, smelled like some strong perfume." Sarah exhaled on the other end. "You want me to come over? We can talk. I can bring some chocolate croissant." Despite her sadness, a faint smile tugged at Rebecca's lips. Chocolate croissants are an effective therapy. "Sure, come by if you can." When Sarah arrived, she found Rebecca still wearing her robe, eyes swollen from a mixture of inadequate sleep and tears. Without a word, Sarah enveloped her in a hug. The warmth of that embrace felt like a life raft in a stormy sea. They settled in the living room, the same place Rebecca had spent hours waiting the night before. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, illuminating dust motes floating in the air. The untouched dinner plates were now a quiet testimony to the heartbreak of the previous night. Sarah reached for Rebecca's hand. "Start from the beginning." Rebecca spoke softly, recounting the tense hours of waiting, the overdue arrival, the suspicious perfume, and the lingering feeling that something was amiss. Sarah listened intently, occasionally nodding or tensing her jaw in concern. "Becca," Sarah finally said, "you can't ignore this. You're pregnant, and stress is the last thing you need. Have you considered confronting him head-on?" Rebecca hesitated. Confrontation wasn't her strong suit. She'd grown up in a modest household where conflict was avoided in favor of quiet endurance. "Maybe he's truly busy with clients," she offered, though the excuse sounded hollow even to her own ears. Sarah squeezed Rebecca's hand gently. "Still, something doesn't feel right. You deserve the truth. And if that means an uncomfortable conversation, so be it." Rebecca nodded, swallowing her fears. She gazed down at her pregnant belly. A maternal instinct to protect her child flared, fueling her resolve. If there was something sinister under the surface, she owed it to herself and the baby to uncover it. That evening, Rebecca prepared a simpler dinner pasta with homemade sauce, fresh bread, and a small salad. She was determined to talk to Richard, calmly but directly. To her relief, he came home earlier than usual, stepping into the kitchen around 7 p.m. He wore the same polished suit he'd left in, though his tie was now loosened. His eyes flickered between the table and her face, as though gauging her mood. She forced a small smile. "Dinner's ready." He nodded, removing his jacket and draping it over a chair. "Thank you. Let me just wash up." They ate in a strained silence. Rebecca could sense the tension humming in the air. She cleared her throat, hoping to dispel the awkwardness. "How was work?" Richard hesitated. "Busy. Meetings. I'm finalizing a deal with some foreign investors. It's complicated." She waited a beat. "About last night. Are you okay? Was it purely business?" He set down his fork, his shoulders stiffening. "Yes, purely business. My client, Mr. Rosenthal, insisted on taking us all to some exclusive lounge. I had to keep him happy." His words were brisk, almost dismissive. "You know how it is. If I offend the client, I lose the contract. One night of entertaining them is worth millions in the long run." Rebecca tried to hide the tremble in her voice. "It's just that you came home smelling like perfume, right?" He cut in, a hollow laugh escaping his lips. "That's from the hostess at the lounge. She was over-friendly, but I promise nothing happened." He offered a tense grin that did little to comfort her. "I'm sorry I made you worry," he continued, taking her hand. "You know how these social events can be. I just couldn't say no, or I'd jeopardize months of negotiation." She studied his eyes, searching for sincerity. "I understand you have to entertain clients. But I'm pregnant, Richard. The first need you hear." Guilt briefly etched his features. "I know. And I'm sorry. I'll try to balance things better." The conversation waned, leaving Rebecca with more questions than answers. She wanted to believe him. Maybe it really was just an overzealous hostess. Yet unease clung to her like a stubborn shadow. Later that night, while he slept, she lay awake, her mind playing out worst-case scenarios. She stroked her belly, as though reassuring the child within that everything would be okay. But was that a lie she told herself? A few weeks passed in a cautious dance. Richard seemed to make an effort to come home earlier. Some nights he stayed by her side, hands gently massaging her feet when they swelled. Other nights, he slipped back into old habits, late returns, cryptic text messages, a lingering scent of perfume or alcohol. He mentioned charity dinners, business galas, high-profile client parties. Rebecca started to feel dizzy from the repeated explanations. Still, she clung to small hopes. On one particularly bright Saturday morning, Richard surprised her with tickets to a spa retreat. "For you and Sarah," he said, pressing them into her palm with an affectionate kiss on her forehead. "Relax. You deserve it." Her heart fluttered with gratitude. Perhaps he truly wanted to make amends. She accepted the gift, deciding to head to the countryside spa with Sarah. It was a short drive from the city, a serene place flanked by rolling hills and calm lakes. The next day, they set off, indulging in massages and herbal treatments, letting the tension of the past few weeks melt away. On the second day at the spa, however, Sarah's expression grew clouded. She stepped out into the corridor after receiving a phone call, her brows furrowed in concern. Rebecca noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" Sarah hesitated. "That was Dr. Green from the hospital. He's an old friend of mine. He mentioned something about Richard's recent visits." Rebecca's face blanched. "Richard's visits to a hospital?" Sarah gave a cautious nod. "Dr. Green said he saw Richard multiple times in the outpatient ward. He was with a young woman named Linda Parker. She's apparently receiving some specialized treatments." Rebecca felt her stomach knot. "Did Dr. Green say why?" Sarah shook her head. "He couldn't disclose details, patient confidentiality and all. But he wanted to make sure everything was okay. He knows you're pregnant, and he found it odd that Richard was there with someone else." Rebecca's heart pounded so loudly she feared Sarah could hear it. Linda Parker. The name was unfamiliar, but the questions it provoked were endless. Who was Linda? Why was Richard with her at a hospital? Was this tied to business, or something far more personal? All the serenity from the spa retreat evaporated. Rebecca felt cold dread coiling within her. She tried to maintain composure, but her voice quivered. I need to ask him. Sarah's eyes brimmed with sympathy. Yes, as soon as possible. Rebecca found herself gripping the spa brochure so tightly her knuckles turned white. She managed a nod. Her mind was already spinning scenarios. Maybe Linda was a business partner, a relative, a friend in need. Or maybe something far more damaging. The next morning, they cut their trip short. Rebecca clutched the spa tickets. Feeling a bitter irony, what was meant to soothe her soul had only ignited a new storm of questions. Throughout the drive back, she rehearsed what she would say to Richard, her heart heavy with a sense of foreboding. Rebecca arrived home, her nerves coiled like a spring. The house stood silent and immaculate, as though it held its breath. She heard faint movement in Richard's study, a room usually off-limits to her. Summoning courage, she marched down the hallway, determined to confront him. He was hunched over his laptop, papers strewn about. At the sound of her footsteps, he glanced up, surprised to see her earlier than expected. Back so soon? Everything okay? She swallowed the lump in her throat. I heard you've been visiting someone named Linda Parker at the hospital. His face paled. He shut the laptop with a snap. Where did you hear that? Her voice trembled with frustration. Does it matter? I know. Are you going to tell me why? He exhaled, raking a hand through his hair. Look, it's not what you think. He paused, as though searching for the right words. Linda is an old friend. She's been dealing with some personal issues, and I've been supporting her. Rebecca's brow furrowed. An old friend? You never mentioned her before. His reply was riddled with tension. She had a rough childhood. We crossed paths when she needed financial backing for a small startup. That fell through, but we stayed in touch. She's currently going through chemotherapy. I've been paying for her treatments. The word chemotherapy jolted Rebecca. She felt a flicker of guilt for suspecting an affair when, according to his explanation, this was about a life-threatening illness. Even so, she pressed further, her voice gentler now. Why keep it a secret then? You could have told me. His eyes flickered. Linda asked for discretion. She's sensitive about her condition, and she didn't want pity. I wanted to respect that. Rebecca slumped against the doorframe, relief and residual doubt swirling inside her. I just wish you'd told me something. Anything. He stood and approached her, placing his hands on her arms. I'm sorry. I didn't want to burden you with more stress. You and the baby are my priority. Linda is just. I have a responsibility to help. In the quiet of that study, it felt like a moment of truce. She leaned into his embrace, tears wetting her cheeks. Could it be that she was overthinking it? Part of her heart softened, wishing to believe the best in him. Yet, something in his voice, in the tension coiling beneath his words, triggered an unrelenting sense of unease. Days passed. Rebecca tried to return to some semblance of normalcy. She busied herself with preparations for the baby, from decorating the nursery in a calm pastel palette to shopping for essentials. Richard occasionally joined her, but often bowed out with urgent business calls or client lunches. One late afternoon, after running errands, she decided to pass by Richard's office unannounced. She had purchased a beautiful painting of a mother and child, an artwork she thought might bring warmth to his office space. As she approached the sleek modern building where Carter Enterprises was headquartered, she couldn't help noticing a figure that looked oddly familiar stepping out of a taxi. Tall, blonde hair, wearing a stylish coat, Linda Parker. Rebecca had only glimpsed a single photograph. Linda had posted on her social media back, when she was launching her startup. Curious and anxious, Rebecca followed from a distance. Linda entered the lobby and took an elevator. Rebecca, feeling a jolt of apprehension, hurried to a different elevator and pressed the button for Richard's floor. When she arrived, the receptionist looked up with a bright smile. "Miss S. Carter." What a pleasant surprise. Rebecca felt her nerves crackle. "Is my husband in? I wanted to drop off a painting for him." The receptionist's smile faltered. "He's in a meeting. Perhaps you can wait in his office?" Nodding, Rebecca walked down the hallway. She moved quietly, passing the conference rooms. Through a windowed door, she glimpsed Richard sitting at the table, Linda right beside him. Rebecca's heart thumped. Were they discussing her treatments, or was this a business meeting? They were leaning in close, Richard's expression intense, Linda's hand placed lightly on his arm. The atmosphere spoke of intimacy rather than business formality. Feeling like a trespasser in her own marriage, Rebecca slipped away and sank into a chair in Richard's office, the painting propped against the wall. Minutes later, Linda emerged from the conference room alone, striding with purpose toward the elevator. Richard followed shortly after, seemingly lost in thought, before he noticed Rebecca. He stiffened, surprise flashing across his features. "Rebecca, what are you doing here?" She forced a smile, though her mouth felt dry. "I brought you something for the office. I saw you were busy." Was that Linda? His expression tensed. "Yes, that was Linda. She's, discussing some philanthropic projects with me. She wants to fund medical research and ask for advice." Rebecca's hand shook slightly on the arm of the chair. "Right." He hesitated, approaching her. "Rebecca, I can sense your suspicion. There's nothing going on." "We're just old friends," she finished, her voice brittle. "I remember." He let out a slow breath, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Let's go home. We can talk more comfortably there." Yet, as they drove home, the conversation was minimal. Rebecca stared out the window, mind a whirl of conflicting thoughts. Was it guilt on his face, or frustration at her intrusion? She couldn't decide. With every passing day, it felt like they were both actors in a carefully orchestrated show, playing roles they could no longer keep straight. 2 more weeks slipped by in an uneasy pattern. Late nights, cryptic phone calls, tense smiles. Rebecca felt like she was drifting further from the man she married. One night, unable to bear the chasm growing between them, she confronted him after dinner. "Richard, I can't live like this," she began, voice trembling. "I need the truth. I want to believe you're just helping a friend. But I'm scared." He looked away, jaw clenched. Then, in a moment of apparent resolve, he nodded. "All right. Tomorrow morning come with me. I'm going to Linda's place. I want you to see for yourself. Then you'll understand." His words stunned her. Was it a genuine attempt to clear the air, or a desperate move to maintain a facade? She nodded. "Fine." The next morning they drove to a modest apartment on the outskirts of the city. The building stood in stark contrast to their lavish home. The peeling paint, the broken intercom, the dimly lit hallways, everything felt worn. They climbed 3 flights of stairs. Richard knocked on a door labeled 3C. After a moment, Linda answered. Her face registered shock at seeing Rebecca. She looked pale, dark circles under her eyes. The faint chemo port on her collarbone was visible beneath her loose blouse. "Richard," she whispered, her gaze flickering to Rebecca. "What's going on?" He motioned for them to step inside. The apartment was tidy but sparsely furnished, and the air carried a faint medicinal smell. Linda's eyes shifted uneasily between husband and wife. "Linda," Richard began gently, "Rebecca's worried. She thinks I'm hiding something, that I'm having an affair with you." Linda's eyes widened. "No, that's not. It's okay," he said, nodding toward her. "She needs to know about your condition. I told her you're sick, but maybe it'd help if you two talked openly." A tear slipped down Linda's cheek. "I'm sorry. I never meant to cause trouble." Her gaze dropped. Richard's been helping me pay for the chemo. I have no one else." Her voice quivered with emotion. "My parents passed away, and I'm an only child. I lost my job. I have nothing. He's been my lifeline." Rebecca felt her heart constrict. The scene was undeniably tragic, stirring a pang of empathy. She touched Linda's hand lightly. "I'm so sorry you're going through this." Linda sniffled, forcing a fragile smile. "Thank you, and I'm sorry for any misunderstandings. Richard has been so kind, but he insisted on keeping it private." A heaviness lifted from Rebecca's chest, replaced by guilt. She had assumed the worst. It didn't erase the loneliness she felt, but it was a relief to know he wasn't betraying her in the way she'd feared. They stayed for an hour, discussing Linda's upcoming chemo sessions, her hopes for remission, and how Richard's generosity was bridging the gap. When they left, Rebecca felt a swirl of relief and remorse. She clung to Richard's hand as they walked back to the car, wishing she'd trusted him more. Yet, even as she took solace in what she'd witnessed, something lingered at the edges of her thoughts. Why had Richard never mentioned Linda before? Why did he still smell of perfume at times? Perfume that Linda did not wear, as far as Rebecca could tell. She let these doubts simmer in the back of her mind, not wanting to sabotage the fragile peace they had reclaimed. Weeks passed, and Rebecca threw herself into preparing for motherhood, scheduling prenatal classes, making lists of baby names, and piecing together a future she wanted to believe would be bright. Richard appeared more attentive, returning from work earlier, showering her with small gifts, an antique cradle, a series of children's books, a custom rocking chair. To an outsider, they seemed the picture of expectant parents in love. Then came a night that shattered her sense of security once more. Richard had promised to be home by 8 p.m. for a small get-together with Sarah and her fiancé Daniel. By 9:30, the table was set with fresh flowers and an array of snacks, yet Richard was nowhere to be seen. Rebecca's phone remained silent. Sarah tried to lighten the mood with small talk, but Rebecca's restless glances at the clock made it impossible to ignore the tension. When Richard finally burst in at nearly 11, he looked frantic. The group fell silent, eyes trained on him. "I'm so sorry," he gasped, shoulders slumped. "Something came up at work, and I had to handle it." Rebecca's disappointment was palpable, but she forced a tight smile. Sarah and Daniel made their excuses and left soon after, sensing the awkwardness. Once alone, Rebecca confronted him in the hallway. "You promised," she said, her voice trembling. "You said you'd be here." He raked a hand through his hair, clearly agitated. "I know. I'm sorry." "Was it Linda again?" she pressed. "Is she okay?" He shook his head. "No, not Linda. This was about the Rosenthal deal. It's complicated. I didn't have time to call." His words faltered as he noticed the tears brimming in her eyes. She stepped away, pressing a hand protectively against her belly. Richard, the first, tired of feeling like second priority. "Our baby's due in a few months, and you're never around when it counts. I know your business is important, but can't you at least call?" His expression softened. He reached out to touch her shoulder, but she flinched. The emotional distance between them felt cavernous. "I'm sorry," he repeated, voice hushed. "Let me make it up to you." He led her to the living room and sat her down on the couch. Then, with sincerity shining in his eyes, he knelt in front of her. "I'll hire more staff. Delegate more. I promise. Starting tomorrow, I'm stepping back from some of these deals. I want to be here for you and the baby." A small fragment of relief flickered in her chest. She saw the desperation on his face, a genuine apology. She wanted so badly to believe him. For a few glorious weeks, it seemed as if he held to his promise. He was home for dinner almost every night. They laughed again, discussing baby names, reminiscing about early memories of their dating days. He accompanied her to prenatal checkups, holding her hand during the ultrasound when they learned they were expecting a girl. The joy in his eyes looked real, lighting up the room in a way she hadn't seen in months. But one afternoon, as Rebecca sorted through the mail, she found an unfamiliar receipt from an upscale boutique. The item listed was a designer perfume, one she had never seen or worn. Expensive. More than she'd ever spent on a fragrance. The receipt was dated just a week ago. Immediately, her mind spiraled. Could it be a gift for her? But he'd never given it to her. She remembered the lingering scent on his clothes. A pungent reminder of nights he came home late. Perhaps Linda was using that perfume. But Linda seemed too ill for such extravagances, and the scent had been different when Rebecca visited her. Maybe it was for a colleague or a business associate. Why, though? She clutched the receipt, heart racing. When Richard returned that evening, she confronted him. "I found this in the mail. Care to explain?" He glanced at the receipt, colour draining from his face. "I bought a gift for a client's wife. It's complicated. I wanted to secure an investment, so I thought a personal touch might help." Her eyes burned with anger. "You spent hundreds of dollars on perfume for a client's wife, yet you never mentioned it to me, or used company funds, or even told your finance manager." He shook his head, looking trapped. "I didn't want it to appear on official accounts. That's precisely why it's private. High-stakes negotiations sometimes require personal gestures. It's all part of the game." Rebecca's mind reeled. "A game? This is our life, Richard. You're giving extravagant gifts to people I've never met. You come home late. You smell of perfume I don't wear. How am I supposed to trust you?" A muscle in his jaw twitched. "Rebecca, I'm trying to keep everything afloat. My business, our future. You enjoy a good life. It's because of these deals." She sucked in a shaky breath. "I never asked for extravagant wealth. I just wanted you by my side, loving me, caring for our child. Where's that version of you?" Silence. He didn't answer. His eyes lowered, and for a moment she thought she saw guilt flicker there, but it vanished, replaced by the familiar wall of stoicism he'd begun to wear like armor. That night, Rebecca wept into her pillow, unsure of how much more she could endure. She felt the baby move within her, a reminder that she had to be strong for the tiny life depending on her. Unable to bear the suffocating tension at home, Rebecca visited Sarah the next day. Sarah had taken a leave from the pediatric ward to focus on her upcoming wedding, and her apartment was cluttered with floral arrangements and colour swatches. Sensing Rebecca's distress, Sarah ushered her to the couch, ignoring the wedding chaos around them. "Tell me everything." Rebecca poured out her anxieties, from the perfume receipt to Richard's long absences. Sarah's face darkened with concern. "Becca, I love you both, but you can't go on trusting blindly if every piece of evidence screams otherwise." Rebecca swallowed hard. "I don't want to end my marriage on a suspicion. What if he's truly just trying to please some client?" Sarah took a breath, speaking gently. "And what if he's lying? You need to find out one way or another." They mulled over possible actions. Maybe hire a private investigator or check his phone records. The thought of it made Rebecca's stomach churn. She never wanted to be the kind of wife who snooped, but the strain of living under uncertainty was worse. "I just don't know," she whispered, voice raw. Sarah stood and rummaged through a drawer. She pulled out a slip of paper, pressing it into Rebecca's hand. "This is the number of Robert Green, a private investigator who used to work in corporate security. He's discreet and professional. No one will know you hired him unless you say so." Rebecca stared at the number. It felt like crossing a dangerous line, but maybe it was the only way to find peace. Days turned into nights. Nights into a slow, painful week. Each day, Rebecca debated whether to dial Robert Green's number. She looked at Richard, who seemed more than ever like a mystery, and then at her swelling belly, a future that felt precarious. Finally, after another late-night return from Richard, during which he delivered a vague explanation about urgent deals, she reached her breaking point. Alone in the dim living room, she dialed the number. Robert Greene answered in a calm, measured tone. They spoke briefly, and she explained the situation. He agreed to meet her at a cafe far from her usual haunts, to ensure discretion. The following afternoon, she sat at a corner table, sipping iced tea, heart pounding in her chest. When Robert arrived, he appeared as a collected man in his 40s, wearing a simple blazer and carrying a neat folder. They spoke in hushed tones. He asked straightforward questions. Where did Richard often go? Who were his usual associates? Did she suspect any particular individual? She handed over the perfume receipt and a few questionable bank statements she found among Richard's documents transactions that didn't seem to tie into their household expenses or his known business ventures. Robert studied them quietly, then nodded. I'll do a background check. Gather any extra details you can recall about suspicious behavior. I'll keep you informed. Walking away from that meeting, Rebecca felt her heart lurch with conflicting emotions, guilt for spying on her husband, fear of what she might discover, and a desperate hope that all of this would be for nothing, that it would confirm Richard's innocence. For the next 2 weeks, tension gnawed at Rebecca from the inside out. Richard seemed oblivious to her inner turmoil, or perhaps willfully ignoring it. He continued living his routine, occasionally showering her with small tokens of affection, sometimes working late. Linda Parker was still receiving treatment, and occasionally Richard would leave to check on her. Rebecca waited, a silent witness to their unraveling marriage. Finally, one crisp autumn morning, she received a call from Robert Greene. I have the information you requested. It's urgent. Can we meet? A sense of dread crashed over her. She agreed. This time, they met at a public park. The air was chilly, leaves falling in golden heaps. Robert arrived, expression grave, folder in hand. What did you find? Rebecca asked, voice trembling despite her attempts to stay composed. Robert hesitated, as though carefully choosing his words. There's more than one issue here, Mrs. Carter. First, the bank statements you gave me connect to an account in Linda Parker's name, so that part appears legitimate. He is paying for her medical bills. But there's another account he's been funneling money into. This one doesn't tie back to Linda at all. It's under the name Julia Lang, large sums at irregular intervals for the past 6 months. Rebecca's eyes widened. Julia Lang, who is she? Robert opened the folder and handed her a printout of a photograph. A glamorous woman in her late 20s, dark hair, poised posture. She's a socialite, based on what I've uncovered. She's well known for mingling with wealthy circles. I tracked some of Richard's movements. He's met her at private clubs, high-end hotels. This is separate from any business deals under Carter Enterprises. The world tilted beneath Rebecca's feet. A wave of nausea swept over her, and she pressed a hand to her belly, where the baby stirred in anxious response. Are you saying? Robert's eyes were kind but firm. I can't confirm the nature of their relationship, but it's suspicious. The perfume receipt you found aligns with one of Julia's known preferences. She's been photographed wearing that exact scent at multiple events. For a moment, the park spun around Rebecca, the trees and the path blurring into a mosaic of heartbreak. She had been prepared for some possibility of an affair, or maybe hush money for a scandal. But hearing it laid out so starkly tore at her soul. She stumbled to a nearby bench, tears pooling in her eyes. Robert sat beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. I'm sorry, Mrs. Carter. I know this is devastating. I can gather more evidence if you wish, or we can stop here. Rebecca swallowed hard, tears blurring her vision. She wanted to scream, to rage, to weep, but above all, she felt a fierce protectiveness for her unborn daughter. I need more. I need undeniable proof, she whispered, voice trembling with sorrow and anger. If I confront him now, he might deny it. I need certainty. Robert nodded. I'll continue my investigation. You should prepare yourself, though. This could get ugly. She thanked him numbly, leaving with a heavier heart than she'd ever known. Her illusions lay in tatters. She thought back to Linda's earnest eyes and frail form. She was indeed sick, and Richard was helping her. But that didn't excuse this other betrayal. Julia Lang, perfume, secret accounts. A wave of nausea rose again, forcing her to steady herself against a tree. When she finally managed to drive home, her tears had dried into a cold, resolute mask. She arrived at the house silent, immaculate, haunted by half-truths. She retreated to the nursery, the room that once brimmed with hopeful anticipation. Surrounded by pastel walls and tiny stuffed animals, she sank to the floor, sobbing until the early hours of morning. The next week passed in a blur. Rebecca struggled to maintain a facade of normalcy. She avoided direct confrontation with Richard, who remained oblivious, caught up in his business dinners, philanthropic gatherings, or so he claimed. A part of her almost wished he'd sense her agony and confess, but he offered no revelation. The tension came to a head on a stormy Friday evening. Rain lashed against the windows, thunder growling in the distance. Robert Greene called again. "I have the proof you asked for. Photos, statements. I'll email them to you securely." Rebecca waited in the darkened living room, staring at her laptop. The email arrived, containing an attachment labeled confidential. With trembling fingers, she opened it. There, spread across pages of meticulously compiled data, were images of Richard and Julia Lang, entering a luxury hotel arm in arm, leaving a private yacht party at dawn, embracing on a terrace. Receipts for extravagant gifts, the same perfume, and even a diamond necklace. The sums he transferred to her account, lump sums that could buy a modest house outright. Tears blurred her vision. She scrolled through photograph after photograph, each capturing a new angle of a betrayal that cut deeper than any wound she'd ever experienced. She felt a swirl of fury, heartbreak, revulsion, and unimaginable pain. The man she loved, the man who promised forever, was living a double life. Her phone buzzed. Richard was calling. For a moment, she couldn't bear to look at his name on the screen. Then, fueled by indignation, she answered. "Where are you?" He paused. Thunder rumbled in the background. "At the office. Running late again. I'll be home soon." A bitter laugh escaped her. "Don't bother with your excuses tonight. Just come home." She hung up, not waiting for his response. She paced the living room, her mind in turmoil, deciding how to confront him. Her pulse hammered so loudly she could hardly think. She considered leaving, packing a bag, and disappearing. But no, she wouldn't run from this. He needed to face what he'd done, and she had to see it through for the sake of her child. When Richard finally walked in past midnight, drenched from the rain, he seemed taken aback by the sight of her in the dimly lit living room, laptop open before her. Lightning illuminated the windows, casting fleeting shadows across his face. She said nothing at first, simply turned the laptop toward him. The images froze him in place. The color drained from his face, and he took a step back, as though the photos might lash out at him. "Rebecca, don't," she said, her voice cold and broken. "I have everything. I know all about Julia Lang." Silence ensued, punctuated only by the roar of thunder. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words trembling on his lips, too small for the enormity of his betrayal. She rose to her feet, her entire body shaking. "You lied to me, made me feel guilty for doubting you, while you showered that woman with gifts and secret accounts. Did you ever love me? Or was I just the wife who'd bear your children while you indulged in your real desires?" Tears glistened in his eyes, but Rebecca felt no sympathy. "I do love you," he insisted, voice cracking. "Julia was a mistake that spiraled out of control. I never meant to hurt you, but you did," she said, cradling her belly. "You hurt me, And you hurt our child. How am I supposed to trust you now? He tried to approach her, but she stepped back. She thought about Linda Parker, truly sick and relying on him. She'd been honest about her gratitude. That was real. But what about this? Nothing about Julia Lang felt remotely justifiable. You have to understand, he pleaded. This affair started when we were going through a rough patch. I felt lonely. You seemed distant, so buried in your teaching and wanting a family. I got caught up in the excitement, the thrill, but it meant nothing compared to you. A hollow laugh escaped her lips. Meaningless? You spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on her. You're financing her lavish lifestyle. Don't insult me by calling it meaningless. He wiped rain from his brow, despair lining his features. I was stupid, reckless. I ended it months ago, but she threatened to expose it all, ruin me, ruin us. So I kept paying her. That's why I had to keep meeting her, to negotiate. She's blackmailing me, Rebecca. That last revelation struck like a thunderbolt. Blackmail? He nodded, voice trembling. I couldn't let her go public. It would destroy my business and drag your name through the mud. And with the baby coming, I tried to manage it, but it only got worse. Rebecca felt the weight of betrayal grow even heavier. So it was not just an affair, but a messy entanglement with a woman who would do anything to keep money flowing. So you lied to me, lied about everything, to keep it from blowing up. And you'd have kept lying forever if I hadn't found out. His silence was an admission. I'm sorry, he whispered, tears shining in his eyes. I'm so sorry. Rebecca pressed a hand to her forehead, tears of anger and heartbreak spilling down her cheeks. She wanted to scream, to erase the last few months, to cling to the memory of the man. She married before everything rotted beneath the surface. For the next few hours they argued, cried, and tore at each other with raw truths. Richard confessed every detail, from the night he first met Julia at a fundraiser, to how their fling escalated, to how he tried to end it only to be threatened with public exposure. Julia was cunning, refusing to let him go easily. And amidst it all, Linda's situation was also real, compounding the complexity of secrets he juggled. Dawn broke, pale light filtering through the rain-streaked windows. Rebecca felt hollow, as though she had cried out every tear. She stared at Richard, the father of her child, a man she once adored with every fibre of her being. She realized with a sickening jolt that, while he might have regrets, he had shattered her trust irreparably. She took a shaky breath, her voice a mere whisper. I need space. I can't make decisions right now. I can't even look at you without feeling betrayed. His eyes pleaded with her. Let me fix this. I'll cut all ties with Julia, handle any fallout. I'll do whatever it takes to keep you and our child. Please. She turned away, tears welling again. I'm leaving. I'll stay with Sarah for a while. I need time to think. He attempted to protest, but she gathered her things, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. She paused at the threshold, looking back at him one last time. I don't know if I can forgive you, Richard. With that, she left, stepping into the morning light that felt cold and merciless. Her world irrevocably changed. In the weeks that followed, Rebecca moved in with Sarah. Her friend opened her apartment with a sympathetic heart, offering unwavering support. Rebecca cried, raged, and tried to find some path through the debris of her broken marriage. She still attended prenatal appointments, now feeling heartbreakingly alone. She ignored the constant stream of texts and calls from Richard, who pleaded for a chance to earn her forgiveness. Rumors of Richard's affair began to circulate in high society, fueled by Julia's cryptic social media posts. The press caught wind of an alleged scandal, though no one had official confirmation. Linda Parker's treatments continued, funded by separate accounts that were not entangled in the drama. Rebecca hired a lawyer to understand her options. She wasn't certain if she wanted a divorce or a separation, but she needed to secure financial stability for herself and the baby, especially since so much of Richard's resources were in jeopardy if Julia took her story public. Confronted with the near collapse of his business, Richard took drastic measures, openly cutting ties with Julia. He enlisted a team of lawyers and public relations experts to ensure that the damage was minimized. He also began transferring assets to trust funds in the baby's name, seeking to prove to Rebecca that he could still provide for them if she allowed him back into her life. Time is a peculiar balm. In her 8th month of pregnancy, Rebecca stood on Sarah's balcony, gazing at the horizon. The city lights twinkled below. Her life felt like it had been split in two before the affair and after. Yet she sensed a stirring of resilience within her. She would find a way forward, with or without Richard. One evening, she received an unexpected visitor, Linda Parker. Pale but resolute, Linda arrived at Sarah's doorstep, asking to speak with Rebecca. Sarah, wary, let her in. They sat in the living room, an awkward tension hanging in the air. Linda spoke first, voice subdued. "I just want to say how sorry I am for any role I played in this. I had no idea Richard was seeing Julia. I only knew he was under immense stress. He's been unbelievably kind to me, and I'm sure that doesn't erase what he's done to you. But I want you to know he never spoke badly of you. He always said he loved you." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. She believed Linda was genuine. "I appreciate you coming here. I don't blame you. It's just complicated." Linda nodded. "I'm in remission now. I have my life back. Thanks to him. I just hope you can find some healing too." When Linda left, Rebecca felt a quiet flicker of gratitude. Despite everything, there was a thread of good in Richard's actions, his unwavering support for someone in need. That single thread didn't mend the tear in their marriage, but it kept a spark of hope from dying completely. 2 weeks before her due date, Rebecca went into premature labor. She woke in the middle of the night at Sarah's place, a jolt of pain radiating through her abdomen. Panic flared. Sarah hurried her to the hospital. The contractions intensified, and in the chaos Rebecca found herself longing for Richard's presence despite her anger. Sarah called him. He rushed to the hospital, face etched with worry, wearing the same disheveled suit. He'd fled from an impromptu late meeting in. When he arrived, Rebecca was already in a hospital bed, breathing through pain as nurses prepared for delivery. His eyes met hers across the room. In that moment, she saw pure fear on his face, fear of losing her, of failing to be there for the birth of their daughter. "I'm here," he whispered, stepping forward, tears brimming in his eyes. "Let me help." She was too overwhelmed by contractions and the swirl of emotions to protest. When the final moments of labor came, she clutched his hand, nails digging into his flesh. He murmured words of encouragement, tears streaming down his cheeks, telling her she was strong and brave. After agonizing hours, the cry of a newborn filled the room. Their daughter arrived, a tiny, wriggling miracle with a fierce set of lungs. The doctor laid her in Rebecca's arms, and she stared down at the baby, overwhelmed by a love so immense it eclipsed everything else. Richard hovered beside her, sobbing softly. For a fleeting moment, their heartbreak and betrayal vanished, replaced by the wonder of new life. They named her Hope, a name that felt painfully appropriate. Rebecca spent the first few days in the hospital, recovering while caring for her newborn. Sarah visited often, and surprisingly, Linda stopped by with flowers. Richard was there too, hovering at the edge of every moment, wanting to help but unsure if Rebecca would let him. She could see the torment in his eyes, the raw guilt he carried. When she was discharged, she faced a choice: to return to the home she once shared with him, or to remain with Sarah, holding baby. Hope in her arms, she sat in quiet reflection. The heartbreak he inflicted was still fresh, but so was the new reality of parenthood. In the end, she decided to give him a chance, if not for their marriage, then at least for co-parenting. She moved back, but on her terms, separate bedrooms, no illusions of immediate forgiveness. "I'm doing this for Hope," she told him. "If you break our trust again, that's it." He agreed to any condition. Slowly, they established a routine. Midnight feedings, diaper changes, lullabies at dawn. Richard was tireless in his efforts to help, taking paternity leave from his business, letting his executives handle affairs so he could be present. A fragile truce took shape, built on their shared love for Hope. Yet, the path to forgiveness was riddled with obstacles. The affair had left scars on Rebecca's heart that wouldn't heal overnight. Some days, when she saw his phone light up with a text, she flinched, haunted by memories. Other times, she caught him looking at Hope with such tenderness and devotion that she wondered if redemption might be possible. Months passed. Hope grew healthier and stronger, an anchor that kept Rebecca and Richard tethered to the possibility of a renewed family. Slowly, trust inched forward. Richard underwent therapy sessions to address his indiscretions and the root causes of his temptations. Rebecca sought counseling too, grappling with the trauma of betrayal. Sometimes they went to couple sessions, where tears were shed and anger was confronted head-on. Julia Lang eventually disappeared from their lives, her blackmail attempts thwarted by a legal team that threatened countersuits and public defamation charges. Linda Parker, in a gesture of gratitude, established a small charitable foundation in Richard's name to help other cancer patients who lacked support. The story circulated in certain circles, overshadowing the rumors of scandal, painting Richard's philanthropic side in a kinder light. None of it erased the past, but it offered them a chance to rebuild on the ashes if they dared. On a crisp spring morning, nearly a year after the disastrous night, Rebecca cooked dinner and waited in vain. She found herself standing in the same dining room. This time, it was Richard who had prepared a meal, a simple dish of grilled chicken, salad, and roasted vegetables. The table was set with fresh flowers. Hope, now gurgling happily in her high chair, reached out chubby hands to grasp a toy. Rebecca's eyes misted as she took in the scene. She remembered how empty this space had felt that night, how betrayal had haunted every corner. Yet, here they were, a family broken pieces, painstakingly fit back together. She gazed at Richard, who met her eyes with quiet humility. "Thank you for staying," he whispered. "Thank you for giving me another chance." She took a breath. "Thank you for showing me you could change," she replied softly. They ate in comfortable silence, interrupted only by Hope's delighted squeals. Outside, birds chirped, and sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the table where once only shadows of heartbreak had gathered. Rebecca knew their future wasn't guaranteed. The road to true healing would be long and twisting. But for now, they had found a cautious peace, anchored by the love they shared for their daughter and the fragile threads of forgiveness that, against all odds, continued to strengthen each day. In time, they might rebuild all that was lost, or build something new and stronger in its place. The story of Rebecca and Richard Carter reminds us that the foundations of our lives can crack, even when they appear strongest on the surface. A single betrayal, a moment of weakness can shake us to our core. Yet, hope often emerges in the most unexpected ways through the arrival of new life, the support of honest friends, and the willingness to confront the darkest parts of ourselves. In the end, Rebecca chose not to run from heartbreak, but to face it, ensuring that her daughter would know love, regardless of the sins of the past. True healing is never easy, and forgiveness does not come without pain. But when trust is rebuilt, it can forge a bond stronger than before. If you found value, inspiration, or even a life lesson in this story, please remember to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel for more tales that resonate with the human spirit. Your support helps these stories reach more people in need of hope and understanding. Thank you for being part of our journey.